And we'll be there with Keith Stroppa as well at grabbing prohibition by the horns, the Texas Regional Normal Conference. That's June 7th, 8th, and 9th. I hope to see you there in Fort Worth, Texas. All right, time for us to go behind the headlines. And today we've got a sad story to tell about Jerry Duval. And this is from Huffington Post. It's called Medical Marijuana Patient Headed to Same Federal Prison Facility as the Boston Bomber. And this story is so disturbing because for those of us that are covering the medical marijuana issue, we recall the story of Richard Flor. Richard Flor was a 68-year-old man in Montana who got wrapped up in all the stings and all of the prosecutions that went down in Montana, and wouldn't cop a plea, ended up getting a sentence, and while he had his 5-year sentence, he died in federal custody because he's a medical marijuana patient, for God's sake. He had all sorts of things wrong with him that needed cannabis and other medications. And all of his supporters and friends and family tried to tell the federal prison officials, you've got to, put him in a decent facility where he can get this medical care. They ignored him because as far as they're concerned, marijuana is not medicine, so he can't be being cured from anything, right? And the man died in federal custody. He died for growing plants and getting them to patients. Well, Jerry Duval has a similar situation. Now, he's been sentenced to 10 years in a federal facility, and the Department of Justice originally sentenced him to, regular federal prison, despite the judge in this case saying, look, the guy's sick, you got to take his medical condition into account. And what is this guy's medical condition? Well, Jerry Duval, he's 53 years old. He had juvenile diabetes, and that led to both a kidney and a pancreas transplant. So he's got 2 organs transplanted. Also, guy's got glaucoma and neuropathy, right? So all sorts of things that, are the medical cannabis is helping this guy with. And that's the situation. Now, all of that's going to have to be treated with standard medications, some of which he was already on. And we're going to be footing the bill for that. We meaning the taxpayers. But the Department of Justice today has relented to public pressure finally, and it will allow Jerry Duval to serve his 10-year sentence for marijuana in a facility that can better meet his medical needs. Now, this facility just happens to be the same facility where they're holding Johar Tsarnaev, the Boston bombing suspect. So he's going to the same prison where the bombing suspect will be. Now, despite the fact that, of course, the federal government prosecutes this man, according to the court documents that went down in the case, he was following Michigan's medical marijuana law. He was, completely following the law there, but he was convicted of having 174 plants. Now, Michigan's law allows a caregiver to grow up to 72 plants per 5 registered patients. Duval had 2 greenhouses with plants in each of them, not run by himself, but run by his children, Jeremy and Ashley. So we've got 2 caregivers covering 10 patients, which should allow up to 144 plants, and then the plants that they would be able to have as patients themselves, right? So, really cutting it close as far as the Michigan law goes, but according to this report, following the Michigan law. Of course, that means nothing to the federal government, which would not even allow Jerry Duval to mention his juvenile diabetes, his kidney and pancreas transplant, his various problems like neuropathy and glaucoma. He can't mention that. He's not allowed to mention that he's following Michigan's law. He's not allowed to mention that he's using marijuana and getting very, very good results from it. That is not admissible in federal court. And so this man goes through the kangaroo court and ends up with a 10-year sentence. Now, his son, Jeremy, was also prosecuted in this. If it's not bad enough that you're going to prison, your son goes to prison as well. He was prosecuted and serves a 5-year sentence at the moment in federal prison in Morgantown, West Virginia. He was offered a reduced sentence if he would testify against his father. Oh, how lovely our justice system is. If you'll snitch on your dad, we won't throw you in prison for so long. Well, of course, he rejected that that plea deal, as any real man would. Now, the wife, Ashley, was not charged, despite openly admitting to her involvement. But for some reason, prosecutorial discretion, they didn't go ahead and charge her as well. Meanwhile, of course, don't forget there's another side of this. Civil asset forfeiture. The Department of Justice is currently attempting to seize the Duval family farm. So 10 years for the dad, 5 years for the son, and losing their family farm, probably passed down from a generation or 2 or 3, who knows. All because a man with 2 organ transplants, neuropathy and glaucoma, was growing some plants and helping get those 2 patients under a law that passed in every county in Michigan. Every county in Michigan voted for the Medical Marijuana Act of 2008. Now, if this wasn't enough to turn your stomach, there's a little twist on this story. Duval said that he and his son are appealing their convictions, arguing that they should have been able to present evidence showing that they were in compliance with state law. Well, they're not going to get anywhere with that. The federal courts have already decided that. But here's the stomach turner. They also noted that a local law enforcement official inspected their operation in September 2010 and made recommendations to improve it, including additional signage, and signed off on its compliance with Michigan law. Local cop came in, inspected it, said put up more signage. Here you go, sign it. You're in compliance with Michigan law. That same officer went to work for the DEA and was involved in the subsequent raid on their property just a few months later. Duval will argue in his appeal that the agent's involvement amounts to entrapment. And what he'll probably be doing here is something called entrapment by estoppel, which is where you believe that someone under the authority and color of law was directing you to do these actions and that these actions complied with the law. And certainly, if you got a local law enforcement official signing off that what you're doing is legal, and then he comes back months later as a fed to bust you, well, if it's not entrapment, it's certainly dirty, that's for sure. We worry about the guy. He says, marijuana made my life a lot easier. Without it, I don't know what's going to work for the neuropathy in my legs. Yeah, and that's the thing. The use of cannabis for neuropathy is better documented than just about any medical use we have. It's where opioid pain relievers won't work. This is the only thing this works. We're going to put this guy in prison for 10 years and let him suffer the stinging pain of neuropathy for that entire decade. All right, we're going to be right back with some music. Hopefully Bacon Dan calling in.